Here today is Tunku Aziz, very proud man who have been played up by his former party, the DAP. And he's here today to explain his ideas, his thinking on why the DAP is such a party that it is today. How do you do that?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
I've heard that you've been very busy giving interviews, and a lot of times you have been the sharp end of the spear, raking in some of your former colleagues in the DAP in the court. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think the spear should be even sharper, but we'll leave it at that for the moment. Yes, I've been very disappointed with the way that DAP, has behaved, in the sense that this is a party which, often claims the moral high ground, and yet at the same time you see that they thrive on lies. They actually operate on inventing lies. They believe that the bigger the lies, the more often the lies are told, something will stick. And unfortunately, this is the case, especially with our younger people.
I think I am on record, and so have you, and another person is the blogger Helen Ang, to describe DAP as Orwellian. I've written a lot of times. In fact, every time I write about them, I can't help but put the O word, and I would always refer to George Orwell's Animal Farm to describe the situation inside the DAP. How accurate is Animal Farm to describe the DAP?
Sometimes, I think that Animal Farm was specially written
exactly as I do.
in anticipation of political parties such as DAP emerging. I think I agree with you entirely with the way you look at DAP, and I think Animal Farm. Orwell's Animal Farm, I think best describes, the philosophy of the so-called Democratic Party.
But why, in this era of greater democracy, would a party like this resort to that kind of political philosophy? Because it's just a total aberration to other parties. And knowing in the great light of social media, the internet, easy recording and photography, you could catch these people's lives flat out, and yet they persist in this Animal Farm thinking.
Yeah, I think this is really because they have captured cyberspace, and I think you have. I think commented in the past, how bloggers have been able to make up stories, tell lies blatantly, because they know that they can get away with them. I think this is a great temptation for a party such as DAP to exploit a system which, because of default on our part, was handed over to them on a platter. No regulation, and the laws have never been fully enforced. I think the time has come when new laws should be imposed, not to restrict freedom of speech, but to hold people in much the same way as the laws hold you as a mainstream journalist accountable for what you say. Even for me, as a part-time columnist, I have to be very careful that what I write, I can defend, but not in cyberspace. The lies that have been told, and these are the lies that unfortunately people believe, because the argument is, well, it's on the block, so it must be true.
Do you think that the DAP would become truly democratic if they got rid of the very people who put them there, who made them look like animal farmers in the first place? Say, Lim Xiang and Lim Guang Yin, these are the perpetuators of the animal farm philosophy within the DAP. Would the DAP become a better party if these two were taken up?
Absolutely. I think it's the mindset, it's the mentality, it's the fortress syndrome, which is what both father and son seem to have developed. Because these are the people who we must not forget. DAP has inherited many of the political beliefs, philosophies, practices of the People's Action Party of Singapore. They are the inheritors of all that is worst, that is really, the practices which are totally unacceptable in a democratic society such as ours is, with all its imperfections. But the DAP, I think, without Lim Kit Siang and Lim Guan Eng, would be really transformed into, a party that fits in with our national aspirations.
When you left the DAP, amidst Huff in many ways, I wrote a piece suggesting that you were naive when you first joined. Surely, before, when I spoke about Animal Farm, I saw it long before you joined them, but yet you did not see that before you joined.
Yes.
All this imperfection within the DAP.
Right.
But when exactly, okay,
Yes.
just tell me, before you joined, how is it that you did not see all this? And when inside, when was the trigger point that you saw it?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned your reference to me as naive, but I thought you were right, absolutely right. I was idealistic and naive to think that, DAP was like any other recognizable political party. When I went in, I really believe that, there was a need for a multi-racial political party. And I thought that the DAP was it. Until I got in and realized that, the suspicions of many people that the DAP was a chauvinistic, a Chinese-oriented party, that was absolutely 100% right. But over time I realized that I got myself into the wrong box, because this was a party which was unlike any other party that I know of, either in Malaysia or any country in the world. For starters, the top leadership, people like Kit Siang, Guan Eng, Karpal and others, they were not elected by the delegates. The system is skewed. The delegates, as you know, elect 20 people. And this, of course, gives rise to manipulation by the leadership to ensure that they would get the 20 people who would be in favor of their continued leadership. So this is the sort of party that you couldn't recognize. For example, as a vice chairman, on the odd occasion when the chairman was away, I was asked to chair the Central Executive Committee meeting. Now, I have chaired many meetings in my lifetime. You know, here in Malaysia, company meetings, Transparency International meetings, and you know, in London, the Commonwealth Secretariat, and then in New York at the UN, etc. I have never come across a meeting procedure which was so totally different. And honestly, I didn't know where to begin.
And how did you begin it?
Because the whole thing is centered on the Secretary General.
I see, yes.
You know, it is a bit like the old, well, it's reminiscent, you know, of the old Communist Party, where the Secretary General was the key figure, and the rest were just there. You know, the animal farm story again.
So it's like just that the DAP CEC is actually a Politburo, in many sense.
Yes, it is absolutely. It is a Politburo by another name, you know. But it is a Politburo in the sense that you don't contradict the Secretary General. Yeah? Otherwise, you know, you'd be sent to the equivalent of the Russian labor camp in Siberia. Here, your political ambitions, you know, would be completely destroyed, and you'd be out of the window.
I've known a few of the exiles, Wee Chu Kiong and Lee Lam Chai was one of them from the 80s. And I somehow suspect there's a lot more inside that can't stand the way things are done. But they're not raised their voice. Have you met across DAP members who are like that?
Oh yes, in fact I was warned, you know, when I first joined the party that, you know, by a very senior person, I shall not name him because I have a lot of respect for him, and he said to me, you know, gave me a background of you know, the party and the party leadership, etc. He said to me, you know, don't cross you know, Kitsiang and Guanyin. Otherwise, your political ambitions, of which I had none for a start, you know, would come to a very abrupt end. So, you know, there is this constant fear of treading on their toes. And every time the issues are raised, the members would be looking at each other and one another, and wouldn't even look at the Secretary General straight in the eye, you know, or looking down. So this kind of feeling, I think, is really quite unhealthy in a party which, you know, is quick to claim its democratic credentials, which of course it has none.
So basically, this is the most hypocritical party, or at the very least, the most hypocritical leadership that we have seen. And unfortunately, that the very roguish way of political activism has found its way into the Malaysian political system outside of the party. Now, after they've won 38 parliamentary seats, the Malays have a saying for this, they have gotten bigger for them than the bush can hold them. So, do you fear for Malaysia's political future now that they seem to have a strategic, I would say they have strategically placed themselves within the framework of the Malaysian political system?
Well, that is really my fear, my concern. I think it's not just mine. I'm sure it is yours too, and you know, millions of other loyal Malaysians. Now we have seen DAP's great capacity for manipulating, you know, truth, for manipulating perceived shortcomings of the government. And they will continue to do this. Now that they have tasted victory, in that, you know, we have done away with many of the laws which would have prevented you know, all the violence of street demonstrations, etc. And they're not coming out openly, you know, proclaiming that street demonstrations should be accepted, they're part of our democratic way of life, but they have never once mentioned the fact that with human rights, with rights, you know, to take part in election, right of speech, and so on, must come responsibilities to them. This doesn't really matter as long as they achieve what they want. For example, they are lawmakers, they are members of parliament, who are supporters of street demonstrations organized by Brussels. Yeah? And when I pointed out to them that, you know, that I would not be, you know, a party to this, because I said, we as lawmakers should not be lawbreakers. To them, that is not a consideration that, you know, has the slightest effect on them. So these people are exploiting democratic values and principle for their own end. So I fear that unless they fall into line with the aspirations of the nation as a whole, I think the future is going to be bleak. And this is why I've kept saying this, you know, in my press conferences. It's reported in the New Straits Times. The government must act within the law, and if any law is broken, action must be taken. And for heaven's sake, you know, do not fear their standard response when you, you know, you take them in, or when you question them. What is the standard script?
Yeah.
Politically motivated,
Yes.
which means to say that, you know, they can do anything they like, and we are too frightened to touch them because we fear of being accused of taking actions which are politically motivated.
Yeah, I've seen that standard reaction, the scripted reaction.
Yeah.
Before the election, the term I've written about it a couple of days back. It's whenever they are criticized, the standard reaction would be racism, and they will whack back by saying corruption, and they will also add in, with the help of Ibrahim, rigged election. It's a standard,
Yes.
scripted, parroted.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And yet people believe. People believe absolutely.
Why is it that people believe so much in what is so obviously a sham, fakery, and probably a bogus type of politics? Why do you think that Malaysians fall for this so easily?
I think Malaysians on the whole are probably the biggest rumor mongers anyway in the world. But also, I think, you know, they are also great believers in conspiracy theories. And going against the government seems to be fashionable, because, you know, especially for the young who have no sense of history, because we have neglected to teach history in our schools. We have not, you know, we have removed the teaching of civics.
Yes.
And I think civics must be put back, you know, in the school curriculum. History must be given a proper place so that people understand how we have developed, you know, from, say, from British colonial period, or even beyond, to the present. And people seem to think that, you know, that all these things that they see around them have just dropped from the sky. And they will not give credit, you know, to what the government, the present government, has done, Yeah. But they believe what the AP, for example, they are so-called experts on our economy, on our defense systems, weapon system, and all of these other things. I think the problem is the government must respond the moment a lie is told. Get the person who has perpetrated these lies, to be accountable.
One of the most insidious statements that Anwar and the dynastic globe stated is that this has been stated twice already. I've heard this term said twice. One said it 2 years back that is claiming that the government must stop brainwashing children with Hitlerian ideas. I took aside that statement and I put in the necessary criticism. Suddenly, a few years later, which is just about, at the time when Datuk Nur Abdul, the ex-judge, said that there would be a Malay backlash against the Chinese tsunami. And then suddenly, what was to be a polemic, simple question about race relations in Malaysia, was turned by Anwar into, incredibly, into one of the most hateful things that ever been stated. And Anwar whacked back the ex-judge by saying that his statement is worse than a Ku Klux Klan and would make Hitler proud. Now, this is the second time the word Hitler has arisen from the words of the opposition. And it got me thinking, saying, if this government was ever like Hitler, none of these jokers would be alive to see it.
Absolutely. This is what they're good at.
Yeah.
They have a special knack for overstating situations. And Anwar he's I wanted to say past master, but he's a living example of a person who thrives on lies. And he's an alarmist. He is a bit like the story of the boy who cried wolf,
Yes.
one too many times. This is Anwar for you. And yet people believe because he is persuasive. He can paint a picture of, doomsday kind of scenario for Malaysia, unless people supported, his ways of doing things. But you are right. If this was a government which bases its philosophy on Nazism, then you think these people would be allowed to hold ceramah and so on? There would be camps for them,
Yes.
and probably with gas supplied by Malaysian Oxygen.
Or even Petronas, for the matter, yes.
Or Petronas, yeah.
Okay, I followed Anwar for many years, since 1981, when I was a rookie reporter covering him and he was with Abdul. I thought he was a bit of a flake then, and apparently he's still a flake now, but worse. He is now being faced with the idea that he'll never go to Korea, yet he's clawing his way. I call him a nihilist in many ways. How do you stop someone like him? What does the government have to do to finally expose him what he really is? Apparently, whatever tactics and strategies, battle campaigns, election campaigns have failed to stop this man from obviously trying to take over the government in the most deceitful ways.
Well, I think, we have to go to the root cause of the problem we now face with Anwar. Anwar, through the AP, which provides the the technical know-how.
Yes.
You know, they have captured the cyberspace. There is no question of that. They have, you know, got it. We have handed it to them on a platter. We have to regulate this. We have to take some examples of how this is being done. I was just reading, you know, the Independent online about the murder, the terrible murder in Woolwich. And subsequent to that, there were two tweeters, you know, who posted messages which were considered dangerous and harmful to society, etc. And you know, within hours, they identified who these people were, and they were charged.
Meaning that the authorities have, from their part, they have recognized and isolated what is free speech, what is hate speech, and what is incite speech.
Absolutely, absolutely, and this is what we need to do. And Singapore has done it, and I think doing a very good job of it. So in Singapore, you post something which threatens national security, or lies which compromise a person's credibility, a person's character, etc. You have to be held accountable. Now, let's do this. We have neglected to do this since the creation of Putrajaya. We have an information service. I think we should take on this in a robust way. I'm not suggesting that, you know, we act as Hitler did, in spite of what they may say, but I think, you know, we should enforce the law. Have laws which are adequate to meet this kind of situation, because otherwise, as you said earlier, I think the future of our country, you know, would be put at very considerable risk.
Do you think the Prime Minister is going towards that? I have a feeling he is, but he is being negated or even undermined by a lot of internal tug war.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice would you give him had you been a close personal assistant to him today?
Well, I would say that, you know, his success as leader of the nation, leader of the government, depends very much on his courage, to get to grips with the forces which are obstructing his plan, his government transformation program, which, as far as I can see, is an excellent attempt, excellent initiative to right the wrongs of the past. Get rid of those who are there merely, you know, to feed their own egos. These people are useless. People have been saying this. Get rid of the dead wood and start afresh. You know, unless the Prime Minister has the stomach for this kind of purging, he is going to be saddled forevermore with people who are going to be a drag, you know, on what he's trying to do. So to the Prime Minister, I say, stay the course, get rid of the dead wood, and find people who can assist in taking the new Malaysia forward.
With that, thank you, Tunku Aziz, for a very combustible comment, for your combustible comments, and insightful also. And I thank you for coming here to join us in the Nasty Chat. Hopefully we'll talk to you again sometime in the future. Again, probably perhaps on the same issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been a real joy. For me personally, to meet you for the first time, I've read all your writings, and it's really a great pleasure. Thank you.